What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and I'm here to let you know that The Night House is no perfect movie. And The Night House is about a teacher named Beth, played by Rebecca Hall, who's trying to move on from the recent death of her husband, Owen. But after she starts to begin experiencing these premonitions, nightmares, and finds bizarre photos of his on his cell phone, she discovers a secret life of his that I don't even want to hint to. And I'm going to be a little light on certain details than I normally would in these videos because I discovered The Night House through my buddy Josh over at Sharp Edge Cinematics when we were talking about movies that were going to be released for the rest of the year. We didn't know what the synopsis was, we didn't see any trailers or photos, we just wanted to walk into this as blindly as possible, discover this old school, hopefully old school A24 horror movie with a Rebecca Hall performance that could remind us how underrated she is as an actress, because I gotta be honest, I don't think I've seen her in anything since The Town, which is a shame because after seeing this, I highly recommend that you go into The Night House as blindly as possible. It'll emotionally hit you the hardest. Rebecca Hall, as expected, gives a career best performance as someone who, right from the opening scene, we can immediately understand the amount of pain and tragedy she's experiencing without her ever saying a word as this quiet, humble individual who doesn't make any attempts at socializing with people out of this need to move on from this tragedy without ever making it anyone else's problem. We see her watching old home movies of her and her husband smiling and laughing together, and then it cuts to her sitting on the couch with this disappointed and angry look, and right away, you understand exactly what she's experiencing, and you can even kind of guess what the circumstances of his death were. But once she begins to uncover certain puzzle pieces and discover these certain revelations about him, what amazed me was how relatable she stayed even when she decided to take out her frustrations in the worst possible way. Whenever she discovers something uncomfortable, whenever someone says something that would have been a hell of a lot more useful before her tragedy, she lashes out in this playfully sarcastic tone in a way that is supposed to kind of punish them for her own suffering, especially during the first tense scene in the movie where a student's mom approaches her and asks, "Why weren't you there at the last day of school for my son to make up for this assignment?" And her response to this was, it was an eye opener. It was devastating to hear both in her husband's backstory and just to show that the reason she doesn't want to socialize with anyone is because once she does admit how she's truly feeling, she knows that people are going to be so bothered and alienated to the point where they may not want to help her. But at the same time, you wonder if under those exact same circumstances, you would lash out at people in the exact same way, and you may possibly alienate people who, even if they don't understand or haven't experienced the same tragedies as you have, they still can and still want to help you if you let them. And they're at least glad that she's expressing her anger finally, but also at the same time want her to realize that just because one person's gone doesn't mean everyone else in her life is. I was a little worried that she would get too over the top with her facial expressions whenever a scare sequence had to happen, but thankfully, she was pitch perfect. She did a great job at conveying fear, denial, anger, remorse, desire, all at the exact same time in ways that gave me absolute chills, as did the direction from David Bruckner, a filmmaker who I had actually never heard of before, but after seeing this, I'm kind of curious what he might do with the Hellraiser reboot that he's about to do. I'm blown away that this was any studio other than A24 that made this, considering this is an old school type of horror movie that has a haunting atmosphere and builds tension by having Beth react to the scary things that she doesn't see or doesn't understand, as opposed to these loud bursts of sound effects and jump scares of ghosts just popping out of nowhere. Granted, there are a few jump scares here and there, but only one of them is a false alarm, and the other few were actually necessary given the circumstances that she was in. But even when Bruckner is not setting up a scary scene, he still puts in these subtle but disturbing visual cues by having Beth framed within a window or a staircase with bars to illustrate this feeling of being trapped in grief that she's in. And as opposed to most studio horror movies where there's a lot of standard coverage and editing as if the audience can't follow anything unless you cut on every line of dialogue, I do enjoy that Bruckner likes to draw out certain conversations in longer takes to make us anticipate the amount of dread and tension between the characters. My favorite example of this being when Beth goes out for the first time after her husband's death, and when she starts blurting out these incredibly awkward things about her life before she even met her husband, just seeing the extended reactions on other people's faces was pretty unnerving. And I like that he had multiple reactions within the same shot sometimes for increased dramatic effect. But in any case, right from the opening scary scene, when Beth hears knocking on her door, but all she can find are wet footprints that lead out to this one boat, the high quality sound effects, the emptiness of the frame whenever we don't see anything, just seeing Beth's scared reactions when she's looking at something that's out of frame, something we can't see, so we're anticipating, we're feeling more dread for what might happen next. It raises so many questions as to what is this entity? Is it Owen? Is it there to help or trick her? If she gets into this boat, what's going to happen next? Is this entity even real, or is it even in her head? And as she starts to unravel what it is the secret life Owen had, the creepy imagery goes increasingly elevated in scope and in ambiguity. Especially, this was the one that really sold it on me. This one sequence where it would appear that there are multiple versions of the same woman in the exact same room, all in one shot too, and the special effects were phenomenal. They blended CGI effects with real sets and real people in a way that reminded me of a James Wan film where even in its most outlandish, it actually felt tangible. And it definitely helped that Ben Lovett's score added so much to the creepy moments by slowly building up the instruments just the same way as Bruckner is building up the cinematography by having Rebecca Hall move slowly in anticipation, but for the look on her face, as terrified as she might be of what might be revealed about her husband or what this premonition might be, she knows that she definitely needs these answers, or at least she thinks she knows she wants these answers, because some people might be bothered by the fact that this movie leaves a lot of stuff up for us to interpret as opposed to getting a clear explanation. And not gonna lie, there are some things that I'm not 100% sure about. That example I gave about multiple women being in the exact same spot, I'm still not 100% sure if it's exactly what the movie claimed to be, but at the same time, the movie puts it best when it says, when one certain character does look at Beth and say, even if you do get these answers, are they going to be the ones that you're looking for? And I feel like the amount of unresolved questions this movie raises actually works to the character's arc in particular. Beth is so concerned and obsessed with finding closure as to who Owen was and whether or not he was really a good person for her, that the further she gets into finding these answers, the farther away she is from really moving on from him and moving on from his death, as opposed to finding solace in the two people in her life who can help her. Now, Vondie Curtis-Hall from Daredevil and Sarah Goldberg from Barry are technically good as the only people that Beth has left, but at the same time, they're more plot devices than they are characters. So whenever Beth has to spend more time with them in order to solve the mystery or find comfort, the pacing does drag on because we're watching this movie for her. We're not watching it for them. And as much as I do enjoy the ending having a much more uncommon resolution for a movie like this, especially with the heavy themes about grief and closure that it tries to tackle, there are way too many exposition dumps on what's really happening within the story that it made the overall conclusion less impactful than it should have been. I'm still glad that they went in the direction that they did. It's just, I felt like you could have left a little bit up for imagination. But in any case, The Night House is incredibly atmospheric, old school, a great character study thanks to Rebecca Hall's performance, the clever script, the incredibly good sound design matched up with the cinematography that made for one of the creepiest movies I've seen all year. I wouldn't say it's as scary as Quiet Place 2 or even The Green Knight, because The Green Knight was a horror movie in some aspects. Regardless, as a haunted house / psychological horror, it's top notch. And for all those reasons, I'm going to give The Night House a 4 out of 5. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you have checked it out, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. Be sure to stay tuned for more reviews, be sure to like and subscribe, and check out my other videos at Sharp Edge Cinematics. Take care.